Hello guys, this is the update on the settings for the Basha system for all of the private clients. Right, a few things to go through. First of all, you can see that I am looking at 8 currency pairs on my screen. So the first question is, how do we track more than 8 pairs? Well, it's very simple. And I'm going to show you this just in case you don't know, guys. If I actually copy this link here and I open a new tab and I just paste that link in and just open up this chart here. Okay, so there's a TradingView chart, and currently we can see that there's only one currency pair that we're looking at there. Well, it's actually the US 30. So how do we get more pairs on the screen? So it's very easy. All you do is you come up here to this little select layout square, drop it down, and then you can see, depending on what size or what level account you have with TradingView, you can choose multiple screens. And down here you see you've got some options where you can choose for all of the screens to be tracking the same symbol, the same interval. You can have it so that your crosshair moves simultaneously on all of the charts that you've got open. You can have the same time for all of your charts, and you can have the same date range. So it's very handy for us if we put on the same interval. So if we now go and put on, let's say, 8 screens, you can now see that each screen that I click on, you can see they're all on the 15-minute time frame. Okay, so if I was to just pull that across and put it next to my first screen here, you can see that I've got 8 pairs being tracked on that tab, and I've got 8 pairs being tracked on that tab. And obviously I could just do the same again with another tab, and there I've got 24 pairs. So then the question is, well, how do we keep track of all of these 24 pairs if we only have one computer screen? Well, it's extremely simple. What we do is we go to Google and we go and Google the term Revolver Tabs. And as you can see, this Google extension will automatically rotate through any tab, all of these tabs at the top of the screen. So if I had 8 on each of the 3 tabs here, then what we can do with the Revolver Tabs is, if we go to the options of the Revolver Tabs, as you can see here, it's currently set, when I turn Revolver Tabs on, to rotate the tabs every 2 seconds. Now, I have moved yesterday, Friday, from a 1-minute chart to a 15-minute chart, and it seems that we're getting much better results from the system. And I don't really want my tabs to be revolving every 2 seconds if I'm literally only concerned on a 15-minute time frame. So really, I only really want them to rotate maybe every 10 minutes or something like that, or every 5 minutes. So I'll leave it at 2 seconds just to basically show you how Revolver Tabs works. So if I close that, and now as you can see, I've got a number of tabs open at the top, and I'm going to go through all of the settings for the system for you guys. But first of all, let's just see the Revolver Tabs in operation. So all I'm going to do is literally click on Revolver Tabs, and you can see that it's gone live. And now you can see that every 2 seconds it's just revolving through all of these tabs at the top: Euro odd, Pound Australian dollar, New Zealand Canadian dollar, US Canadian dollar, gold, and finally US 30, where I'll stop it there. So I hope that helps at least some of you out who have only got one screen and were wondering how to efficiently keep track of each of the pairs that you have. So now let's crack on with the training itself. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to show you the settings, and it's probably easier. Let me just close that tab there. We don't want that one open. It's probably easier to show you the settings just on one currency pair so that you can see everything very clearly. Down here we have the relative strength index, the RSI. Now you do not need the RSI on your chart. The reason that I have it is that it's something that I constantly watch just to look for divergence, but this video has got nothing to do with divergence, and divergence has got nothing to do with the Basha system. So the only thing really that we're looking at is we're looking at a very simple layout now. Now you may recall that what we were doing is we were using the Kyle algo, and the Kyle algo was giving us the buy and sell signals. Okay, and what I found out throughout the week is that there's a far more effective way to actually trade the Basha system. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off Kyle algo, and we're just going to hide it now. And what we have active is we have three different indicators. First of all, we've got supply and demand visible range from Lux Algo, and that's the indicator that's giving you the resistance and support bands, and I think everyone is probably aware of that. All of these three indicators are free on TradingView, and after this video I'm going to be pinning all of the settings in images in the private Basha group. So all of the settings that we have here, there's your supply and demand visible range. These inputs, they're all going to be pinned in the group for you, literally probably before you even see this video. So don't worry about the settings in this video, just go and have a look and take your time and just look at the screenshots that I'm going to post for you. So what we've got is we've got the supply and demand visible range by Lux Algo, we've got the X48 indicator, and we've got the 8-period moving average. It's the yellow line that's the 8-period moving average, quite simply. And to get the 8-period moving average, what we would be doing is we'd be coming up to indicators at the top, and we just type in exponential moving average. So you've got the moving average exponential, the EMA. Okay, so you'd just be choosing that, and there it would come onto your screen. I've now got it on there twice, so I'll just delete one of them. So as I've said, we have the support and resistance blocks, we've got the 8-period moving average, and we've got the X48 indicator. And the only thing that I'm interested in with the X48 are the bands, the upper band and the lower band, nothing else. I've turned everything else off, and to be honest, if I knew how to get rid of these little buy and sell diamonds that appear, I would even turn those off, because we do not need them. Okay, so going back to my multi-chart, the way that I run the system is I have 3 separate monitors, so I'm literally looking at 24 assets permanently, and I don't have to use the Revolver Tabs. So if we, what I've done here is I have now opened a separate tab for each of the major currency pairs, and I've just chosen the first currency pair for each major. In other words, the Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, the Canadian dollar against the Swiss against the yen, the euro against the Australian dollar, the pound against the Australian dollar, the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar, the US dollar against the Canadian dollar, and I'm also going to show you the Basha system on gold, and I'm also going to show you it trading the US 30. So let's start with the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. What we're going to be tracking here is Friday's trading session. Okay. Now obviously if I wanted to look at a much bigger time period, we would just scroll out like that. But if you look at the date range at the bottom, I'm just going to go all the way back in, and I'm going to pick it up on the 29th, which was Friday. And all of these 7 or 8 charts that we're going to be looking at, they're all set up for Friday's session. So what we're looking for is we're looking for price action, the bars, to start and trade above the bands or below the bands. Now I don't just want a wick. I don't just want this wick to drop beneath this band. I actually want a part of the body of the candle outside of the bands, and that's the first thing that I would be looking for to spark my attention for a possible setup. Now as you can see on the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar, for the whole of the trading session here, all of the price action were inside the bands. Now just for the purposes of considering the day of the week that we're looking at here, this is actually, as we said, Friday, so I will not be considering any trade in the last couple of hours. So these last 7 or 8 bars, even if there is a trade, I'll not be taking it because it's Friday afternoon going into a weekend and I'm just not interested. So on this first chart here, you can see that we do not have a trade. So let's move on to the second chart, which is the Canadian dollar against the Swiss. Now here you can see quite clearly we have the bands, and we've got price action that's breaking all over through these bands. Now for an entry, all I'm looking for is I'm looking for price to actually first of all fall through the band. As you can see here, the body is broken through and the body stays through there for 45 minutes, as you can see. So this is my heads up that I'm going to be getting a trade at some point over the next hour or so. Now my entry is I need to see a bar close above the 8-period moving average, which is that bar there. Okay, so my entry is going to be the opening of the next bar. So there's your next bar. So we would be entering a long position here, and the stop is going to be just underneath the recent swing low. Okay, so we've got a stop down here, and obviously we are going for a 1 to 2 risk reward, and as you can see quite clearly, we get our 1 to 2 very quickly as far as bars are concerned. In time, that trade would have taken an hour, maybe just about 2 hours to hit our profits there. So here we continue throughout the trading session, and we're trading outside of the bands, which is perfect because it's a heads up that we are looking out for a short. And as you can see, price comes into the resistance area, and then what we get here on the 1330 bar is that we get a close beneath the 8-period moving average. So that there is our trigger to open a short position. So on the opening of the very next candle, we're going to be selling here, and we're going to be putting our stop just above the most recent swing high. And this time you can see we've got a 2 to 1 risk reward, and you can see here the price goes straight to our target. So that's 2 trades and 2 winners, and anything in this last period of time of Friday afternoon, we're just going to completely be ignoring this. So let's move on to the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. Again, you can see here that the first movement outside of the bands was a wick there. This is in my trading time. It's after 7 o'clock in the morning, but I'm not interested in a wick. price, the body of the candle must close, or sorry, you must see some body of the candle beneath the channel. So the very first entry that we get is actually going to be up here, because you can see we come outside of the channel, we then close underneath the 8 period moving average, we then get our entry on the very next bar, we have our stop loss above the most recent swing high, and we're targeting a 2 to 1, and as you can see we get our 2 points on that trade. We've now got a situation where price right here is trading underneath the band, so I'm looking for an entry to go long. The entry to go long actually appears here. So this one's not quite right. Let me just take that one out and let's draw this one again. We've got a long entry coming in when the price action closes above the 8 period moving average. So we're actually got a long position there, and our stop is going to be beneath the most recent swing low, and our target is going to be a 1 to 2. So let's just draw that up to 1 to 2 and see what happens on this one. What happens on this is first of all, it's quite clear that we don't get our 1 to 2 risk reward. So what we need to see is do we get to a 1 to 1? Now a 1 to 1 is going to be about there, and as you can see price action doesn't even get us to a 1 to 1. So this trade itself would actually carry through until the end of the trading day, and at the end of the trading day what you're going to see is we would have been taking a small loss. We entered there, we got out there, and you're probably looking at something like a 0.1 or 0.2 of a loss, but a very, very small loss. Let's move on to the next pair, which is the euro against the Australian dollar. Right, now here we can see that prices moved outside of the bands. So our entry candle is this one here that closes above the 8 period moving average. Sorry, that's the setup. The entry is going to be the opening of the following bar. So we're going to take a long position going up. Our stop is going to be just underneath this swing low, and as you can see we got stopped out, so that's a losing trade. Our next trade is here because price is still outside of the bands, and we get a close above the 8 period moving average. So we will be getting a long trade going up. Our stop would be just underneath the swing low, and this is debatable as to whether or not we would have had our stop hit, but I'm being conservative and I'm going to accept a loss on that trade. So there's 2 losing trades in a row. Our next entry is going to be here, where we have another close above the 8 period moving average. Our stop is going to be below the most recent swing low. We're going for a 2 to 1, and you can see we smash that very easily. Up here we get a short entry, but at that time on a Friday afternoon we would not be taking it. Moving on to the British pound against the Australian dollar. You can see here that we are outside of the bands, but we don't actually get a close above the 8 period moving average until here. So here we would be entering for a long. Our stop is underneath the swing low, and as you can see our target would have been a 1 to 2, just about there, and you can also see that down here if we'd have held on that long we would have actually been stopped out. So did we get a 1 to 1? Because at a 1 this is where we take a half a point and we move our stop loss to break even. So as you can see here we do get a 1 to 1. So as the market falls back down here we're actually not even in that trade, because as soon as the market comes back to break even we're actually out. So that is in effect a winning trade. The next one that we get is going to be here, where price action again closes above the 8 period moving average, stop just below the recent swing low, a 1 to 2, straight to target. We move on to the New Zealand dollar, Canadian dollar, and here that we see prices outside of the bands. You can see we then get a close back inside the band. The stop is going to be above our recent swing high. Quite clearly we didn't get a 1-to-1. It was pretty close. In fact, I'll draw that one again. Let's check that one out. We go for a short position, so our short is going to be at the opening of that bar. The stop is going to be just above the swing high, and we're going to see whether we get a 1-to-1. And as you can see, we just failed to get the 1-to-1, okay, before price comes back and stops us out up there. So that's a losing trade, okay. We would then wait for the body to come back outside, which it just does there slightly, but that's a valid setup. We wait for a close above the 8 period, which we have here, and then we're going for a 1-to-2, which you can see we clearly get, okay, and then the rest of the session we just ignore. We then move on to the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. You can see for quite a few hours here, price is way outside of the bands. So what we're looking for, we're looking for a close above the 8 period moving average, which we get here. Now, our stop is going to be just underneath the recent swing low. And as you can see, again, it's debatable whether we would have actually been stopped out. But again, I'm being conservative and I'm going to assume we took a loss. So there's a losing trade, but on this bar here we get back in with a close above the 8 period moving average. Our stop just underneath the swing low, and as you can see we absolutely max it straight to 1-to-2. Now I'm also going to show you it trading gold. Here's gold. You can see that we are outside of the bands here. You can see we just closed back in the band there. Our stop is going to be just here above the swing high, and you can see there we just hit a 1-to-1. So you get a half a point on there. It's a winning trade, and as soon as price comes back to break even, that trade would close. The next one we have, you can see very clearly we've got a close beneath the 8 period moving average, a 1-to-2, straight to profit. And finally I'm going to show you it trading on the US 30. We are, in fact, I'm not quite sure. Let's have a look at that trade there, because we don't actually move outside of the bands until here. So the very first trade we would have there is this one, where we would be going short here. You've got your stop loss above the swing high, and you can see again we just hit a 1-to-1. And when you hit a 1-to-1, we're going to take a half a point, and stop loss is going to be moved to break even. So that's another winning trade. We then have a close back underneath the moving average, 8 period moving average here. So we get an entry to go short, stop above the swing high, and then we get our target very easily. So there, if we look through how many trades and where we were on just a small percentage of the portfolio, asset portfolio that I personally follow, we didn't have a trade on that pair. We had 2 trades, 2 wins, so you're up 4 points. We then had another trade, we're up 6 points, and then we had that was the trade where we took a tiny loss. In fact, that loss is so small, I'm just going to call it break even. So we'll just do this again. We've got 2, 4, 6 points. We then move on here to a loss, so that's down to 5 points. We're another losing trade, down to 4 points. We're back up to 6 points. We have a 1-to-1, so that would be 6.5 points. You only get a half a point for that trade. That moves you to 8.5 points. There's a loss, so that's 7.5 points. That's 9.5 points. We've then got a loss here, which is 8.5 points, back up to 10.5 points. We've then got a 1-to-1, so that puts us to 11 points. That puts us to 13 points. A 1-to-1, 13.5, that's 15.5 points. Okay, so 15.5 points, and if we look at the win rate, we've had 2 out of 2, 3 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 6 out of 9, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 11, 7 out of 12, 8 out of 13, 9 out of 14, 10 out of 15, 11 out of 16, 12 out of 17. So a very good win rate, and if you were to roll that out over the full 28 currency pairs and then include gold and US 30 as well, you can see again in one trading session the results of the Basha system are extremely good. I hope that video helped, and I would ask that you now revert to the pinned images which are in the VIP Basha group. Thanks guys, and have a good trading week.